Okay, good morning, everybody. We are on 29B. We're going to finish up this. Did we get to the Mishnah yet? I don't know if we got to.
I thought we just started. Maybe I'm.
You tell me.
Oh, the
We,
next mission. No, I'm not sure. I don't remember Pride. I don't think so.
okay. Good morning, everybody. So let's say we are on. We got into a argument that we brought the machloka. We brought the disagreement between Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda. Dava she'ein mitchaven. When you do an act, and as a result of the act, you do not intend to do a malacha, you do not intend to do the action that's forbidden from the Torah, but it might happen. It might happen, right? We spoke about a guy going ahead and dragging a bed or a couch outside a dirt floor, and where you might make a furrow in the ground. You might, yes, make a furrow, you might not make a furrow. If you make a furrow, you're happy that there's a furrow because you're happy that the ground should come softened when you want to plow. You're not intending to make the furrow. So here's the question, Adam. If you're not intending to make a furrow, you might make a furrow. Or let's do an act that you might come to make a furrow when you're not intending to do it. So that's an argument in the Gemara. Now, what's pretty clear, it seems, if you know you're going to make the furrow, even if you don't intend to make the furrow, you can't do it. But here we don't know. We don't know that the furrow is actually going to be made. And you're not intending to a furrow. That was the question in the Gemara. And there's an argument there. And then the Gemara brought, so Rabbi Yehuda says it's forbidden to do that act, and Rabbi Shimon says you could do it. It's not a problem. Then we had two different rabbis, later rabbis, um, trying to clarify more details of this argument. One rabbi says, the allowance of Rabbi Shimon, you could do it only by a large bed, a large couch, where you have the option of picking it up and carrying it and avoiding the possibility of making a furrow. But if it's a small chair or it's a small couch where there's possibility you make a furrow, and you can avoid the situation by just lifting it up and raising it and carrying it, that you would have to do. You would not be able to go ahead and drag it.
So the dragging, a big one, you don't know that would make a fraud.
Right, right. Both situations, you don't know it's going to make a furrow.
Okay,
But even if you don't know
I
it's going to
see.
make a furrow, there's an opinion that says that if you could avoid the situation, if it's a small bed, a small chair, avoid the situation. Don't do it.
Don't take the allowance unless you need the allowance.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And the reason why he lets you, the reason why he lets you could use the allowance is because technically you don't have intention to do the work. It's not definite that you're going to do the work, right? The action, the malacha, the act of work might not happen. The other opinion says the other way. He says the rabbi that says you can't do it is specifically talking about a small chair, a small couch where you could lift up. But that rabbi would agree that if it's a big couch, a big chair, then you would have to go, then you're allowed to go ahead and drag it. So, meaning to say, one rabbi says their argument is by a small couch and a small chair, whether you have to lift it up or not have to lift it up. But a big chair, a big couch, everybody would agree you could drag. And that's a more lenient approach in understanding the argument. That everybody would agree you could drag a large bed, a large chair. And the other approach in the argument is no, they're arguing by a large chair, a large bed. But if it would be a small chair, a large bed, a small chair, a small bed, a small couch, everybody agree you would have to carry it. You cannot drag it. So we have each approach. One approach is a more stricter understanding of the argument, and one's a more lenient understanding of the argument. That's what the Gemara brought. And then the Gemara wanted to prove which opinion understanding of the argument is correct, which approach is correct. So the Gemara brought that's maybe where we should start from over here. We started talking about the Shatnez. We are on 29b5. Mativ Rabbah. Rabbah asked the following question. Mochrei ksut mochrin kedarkam. people who sell kasut, people who sell clothing, and you're a salesman. And in those days, it seems that it was very common that the salesman modeled the clothing, meaning he would put the clothing on and say, "Look how nice this suit is. Would you like to buy this suit?" Right? So now, what about if you know the shatnez in the garment? Can you go ahead and put on the garment knowing the shatnez in the garment, but you're not intending to um, benefit from the shatnez and morning asaf? So first you can ask yourself the question: if you wear, Torah forbids you to take wool and linen and stitch them together, which I think we spoke about in the past. The more expensive the garment, Adam, the more expensive the
The
suit, the
more
more
likely
likely that you have
the
shatnez. The more expensive the coat. I told you about a case. One of the guys from the shul asked me to bring a coat, expensive $2,000 coat, to check for shatnez, and it had shatnez. The whole collar was stitched, and they did such a job with the shat. They stitched that linen into that collar so well. It was a big job to get it out. And and the question is here, we have an allowance. It says mochri kesut. People sell clothing. Mochri kedakah. They could sell. They can actually put on the garment, wear the garment. But the Gemara says specifically, as long as when it's the summertime, you don't have intention that it's going to protect you from the sun. Or when it's wintertime, you're not wearing it outside to protect you from the rain. Your only intention is to show the possible customer, the potential customer, how beautiful this garment looks. You ever see a guy in a jewelry store, sometimes he'll put on, a guy comes to buy a necklace for his wife. So the lady behind the counter might say, "Look how this looks," right? And I say, "You see how nice it looks. Maybe you want to get that for your wife." Now, so Tosus points out, let me ask you a question. Even if he doesn't have intention to protect himself from the heat in the sun, in the summer days, and doesn't have intention to protect him from the cold in the winter, it's a sick shot. It's definitely going to happen. If it's cold outside and the guy is modeling a coat or modeling a suit, so shouldn't it automatically be protected? What's happening. You can't say, we have the concept. If you know by dragging the bed, you're going to go ahead and the dragging of the bed um, is going to make a furrow. We said, even though you don't intend to have the furrow, we know you like the furrow, you want the furrow. So we say it doesn't make a difference what your intention is. You're doing the act of malacha. You're making a furrow that you want. So how is it? What is this? What does it make a difference whether he intends to protect himself from the rain or not? If we know it's going to protect him, it's definitely going to protect him. Remember, shatnez, to violate shatnez has to have that you have the Torah's prohibition is when you're wearing shatnez that you're going to have you're benefiting from. But if you're not benefiting from it, it's not prohibited. But if it's wintertime, you're definitely benefiting from it. So who cares what you're thinking about? I don't want to have the benefit, but you're having the benefit. I don't want to enjoy the ice cream that I'm eating, but I'm enjoying the ice cream. I don't want to cut off the head of the chicken, but I don't want to kill the chicken. I'm just going to cut off the head. But you're going to cut off the head. You're going to kill the chicken. So Tosas points out we're talking about a case that you're wearing other clothing that's going to protect you from the rain, other clothing that's going to protect you from the sun. So therefore, there's no benefit. You're not benefiting from this clothing. That's what Tosas points out. If you were benefiting from the clothing benefiting from the wool and linen that you're wearing together, that was stitched together, it doesn't make a difference what you're thinking if you're benefiting from it. But Tosfos says this case is talking about when you're not benefiting from the the garment. Okay, so back to the Gemara. Vatznuim, with the people that are tznuim, the tznuim that are the modest people, that they try to go ahead, and these are people that are very holy, that stay far away from anything that people could say that they're doing something wrong, so that doesn't look so good. Meaning, even though if it's 100% kosher, they stay away from doing things that don't have the don't look so good. So hatznuim mafshilim b'makel achreim. They hang the garment in back of them. They have like on a stick, whatever you call it today. That you hang a garment on some sort of platform or some sort of something, and they wouldn't model the clothing, even though halachically they're allowed to, because there's no definite they're not benefiting from it, like Tosha says, because they have other clothing on. But you know what? At the end of the day, they're wearing a shatnez. They're putting on a wool and linen, a garment that has wool and linen stitched into it, even though they're not intending to benefit, and even though they're only doing it for modeling it, they'll stay away from it. Okay. So now the Gemara says, "V'hacha," in the case of this situation of the clothing salesman, the efshalim mevad kitzuyim, he has the ability he has choice. Like the guy who could lift up the small couch and the small chair, he could lift it up, he could avoid the situation. So the average seller of clothing could just put the clothing on some sort of stick to model it. The chiktanim dummy, it's like, and that'd be like the case of the small chair, the small couch, you could lift it up. And even though you can do that, you could avoid the situation of wearing it and modeling it. But as long as you don't intend to have benefit, and it's not definite that you have benefit, Sharila, Rav Shimon said you could go ahead and model it. So this shows, this is a knockout to Rabbi Yirmiyah Rabba's understanding. Rabbi Yirmiyah Rabba had understood that the prohibition, the allowance of Rabbi Shimon to drag the bed or the chair was only in a large bed, large chair, large bed where you can't lift up. But if it would be a small chair or a small bed, you would have to lift it up to avoid the situation and possible, act of doing a act of malacha work becomes this. We see from this Gemara that it's not so. That the opinion, the allowance of Rabbi Shimon, drag the bed and the chair would even be what? Like a small bed and a small chair. You could drag it as long as you don't intend to do the act of making a furrow, and as long as it's not definite, you can make a furrow. Even though you could have lifted the chair and the bed, you don't have to. And where's the proof from? From the seller of clothing. The same way he doesn't have to put the clothing on this stick instead of wearing it. He could avoid the situation. He could avoid wearing it. But that's not what we obligate him to do. He doesn't have to go that far. Okay. That ends that piece. Mazel tov, mabruk. Someone extinguishes a fire. You have a fire going. You have your lantern, you have the oil, you have the wick, and the flame is burning. And what do? You took out the fire on Shabbat because the Gentile, the community that you were living in, the country that you were living in, let's say with the Persians, they had a day on their holiday that did not allow any lights anywhere in town. The only place where the lights were allowed were in the churches or in the places of idol worship. And on that day, if there is a light burning, now I don't know why the light wasn't taken out before the Shabbat. Because if you know that you shouldn't light it if you know you're going to have to take it out. But let's say for whatever case was, there was a light burning and you forgot to take it out before Shabbat, or maybe you went ahead and you lit it before Shabbat with the understanding that you'd get away with it, but then you realize that, it's dangerous or something that maybe someone's coming to check and there's someone coming to town and then you could be snitching, it could be a danger of life. So of course you could go ahead and take out the fire if it's a danger of life and death. So here, now the Mishnah is going to say the word patur, that you're exempt, which seems to say you didn't violate something, but you shouldn't have done it. But the Gemara is going to clarify it here. You're actually allowed to protect your life to take out the fire. So if you take out a fire on Shabbat, because you're afraid of the non-Jewish community that might punish you for having the light on in your house, well, and it's danger of life. They list him. Well, let's say there are robbers. You don't want them to see the light, that there's light in your house. If they see there's light in the house, oh, they know there's a person there, they might come to attack. Now again, you should not, I would say you should not have lit the light before Shabbat if you think there's robbers coming. And I don't believe that you can light the candle before Shabbat, knowing that you might have to take it out. I believe that we're talking about a situation where you had lit the Shabbat candles, not being concerned of robbers, and then somebody said, there's someone in the town, there might be someone in town that's dangerous, and then you found out, or your wife, the wife lit the candles, she didn't know tonight was the holiday of the Persians, that everything's in the place of the Zohar. She's not out of the street as much as the man knows what's going on in the political scene. And similarly, the wife might have lit the candles not knowing that there's someone in town that maybe is dangerous. So therefore, when the husband comes home and he says, you know what, there's someone, you didn't know, but I was told that there's somebody in town that we got to watch out. So, and therefore the husband goes in, he takes out the fire, he's allowed to take out the fire. So ruach ra is a very interesting situation. For someone who has a certain type of sickness, that he's only calm when it's dark, when he can't see. And if he's going to keep the light, if he's going to keep the light on for this person, then his life could be in danger. They translated, melancholia. I don't know how to pronounce it. You see that, Adam?
Yeah, yeah.
Because of a certain type of sickness. But again, we're talking about a sickness that is a life and death sickness. We're not talking about someone, like a lady who's pregnant. I got a telephone call yesterday, Rabbi, my wife's pregnant. Could she eat on Yom Kippur? It's not a life and death situation. Yeah, she might be throwing up. Ladies throw up a little bit, whatever they have certain, whatever the, part of certain parts of the pregnancy, they don't feel so great, but it's not a life and death situation. She's not dying, what I'm saying?
Right.
And therefore she has to fast. And I explained how she shouldn't exert herself. If it's necessary, she should not go to shul if it would be easier for her, that she didn't feel that she's using too many calories up and burning too much and feel harder for her. If that's the situation, it's, let her daven at home if necessary. She can't break the fast unless her life's in danger, but if life's not in danger, you don't, yeah, it might not be comfortable. It might not feel so good that you're going to be fasting when you don't feel so great, but it's not life and death situation. But here we're talking about a situation of, of course, if she would be sick on other fast days, she could break her fast on other fast days. But if she's not feeling well, and I think that in general, I think the Sephardi women, I don't think the pregnant women fast on other fast days. Ashkenazi women, if they're healthy, if they're strong, if they're doing well, if they're all right, they might be more strict on other fast days as well. But again, Yom Kippur, it's not a question of strictness. Yom Kippur, they have to fast unless everybody, unless it's a life and death situation. So a person so therefore, Patur, in all these cases, there's no violation of Shabbat, taking out the fire for protecting life and death situation. However, a guy just, I want to save on my electric bill. I want to save on the oil. I don't want to use up my oil. So I'm going to sleep and the fire and the lantern is on. I don't need the lantern when I'm going to sleep. So I take out the fire, close the light. That's not for life and death. That's to save money. I can't do that. And if a guy went in and did that, now we're going to have a question in the Mishnah. Is he violating the Shabbat on a Torah level or violating the Shabbat on a rabbinic level? So that's going to be discussion here. Everybody agrees I can't take out a fire on Shabbat because want to prevent, save the fuel, save the oil, save the whales. No, save the oil. You heard the little joke? Save the whales, right? Some people like to save the whales, save the animals,
Oh yeah.
But here we're talking about saving the fuel. So if you want to do it because it saved the fuel, you can't go ahead and do that. And if you did it, so this first opinion says he's chayav chos alaner. If he had mercy on the lamp, he didn't want to, or chos alaner, they want to translate it is that sometimes it's talking about that the nair, yeah, because right, this case is not the case of the fuel of the oil. That's the next case. Chos alaner is I have mercy on the lamp, because if it's an earthenware lamp, the longer it burns, sometimes the lamp breaks from the heat of the flame. So if I want to take out the fire, because I'm concerned to protect the lamp itself, or chos al hashemen, that's the case that I said before. If I have mercy on the oil, I want the oil to remain. If I take out the fire, not to lose the oil, or chos al tilah, I want the wick. I want to use the wick tomorrow night after Shabbat, and I want to extinguish the fire because I want the wick to remain. I don't want the wick to burn down, to have nothing left of a wick. So chayav. If I did all these things unintentionally, meaning I didn't know I'm not allowed to do that. I thought I'm allowed to do that on Shabbat. I'm not, and I mean that's ignorant. That's ignorance. I did not know I'm not allowed to do the malacha. So the law is, if a person violates the Shabbat, one of the 39 malachot, chief categories of action of work on Shabbat, unintentionally, he has to go to the Beit HaMikdash and bring a chatat, bring a sin offering. A sin offering comes for sinning unintentionally. When you say chatati, I sinned, uh, sin, chatanu, avinu, chatanu denotes a Sachlon avinu ki chatanu, mchalon makeni ki bashanu. Ki chatanu is an unintentional sin. And we need atonement for unintentional sins, because why did I not know that I can't do that? Or if a person would, a different case would be if a guy went ahead and he forgot it was Shabbat and he put on a fire. So, do you ever forget your name? How do you forget a Shabbat? Forget Shabbat, that's also a sin. You forgot it was Shabbat and you did work on Shabbat, so that requires also a chatat, sin offering. So this opinion says he has to bring a korban chatat, a sin offering. Now, however, Rabbi Yossi poteh bekulam. Rabbi Yossi says in these cases he will not need to bring a sin offering. He's not in violation of the Torah law. Chutz min aptila. Now, what's the argument here? When a person does a malacha on Shabbat, and except chutz min aptila, except the case of the wick, nei shel osa pechem, because you're making when you intend to make a the wick easier to burn a second time. We'll discuss that tomorrow, more about that. But let's discuss what's the general discussion here. When you have a act, every malacha, in order to be chayav on Shabbat, does the act have to be done with slicha legufa? That you need the the way the malacha was done in the Mishkan. An act was done in the Mishkan. Let's say they would go ahead and light a piece of wood, and then they would blow out the wood to make a coal, right? They would want to make a coal from the wood. So the purpose of the extinguishing of the fire was to make a coal, and that's called, meaning you need the extinguishing. You need the act of extinguishing in order for you to go ahead and have the coal, right? And when you take out a fire for the purpose that you want to save the you want to save the coal for future you want to you're taking out a fire for some other reason, not to make something, not to do it for the purpose that it was done in the Mishkan. So I mean, the act of the work is taking out the fire, but you didn't take out the fire for the purpose that it was taken out in the Mishkan. So would that also be in violation of the Torah law? Do you have to take out the fire for the same purpose that they took out that they for the purpose that they took out the fire in the Mishkan? Do you have to, so those are every act that you do on Shabbat, does it have to be similar to the way they did in the Mishkan? Or if you did the act, if the act of work that you did was the end result was the same. You took out a fire, you carried, you plowed, but you made a furrow, but you didn't do it for the way that they did it in the Mishkan. Would that carry the Torah violation or not? So we'll see more tomorrow about the meanwhile they're not starting. I think they're starting yet. Oh yeah, starting. Okay. Take care. We'll see more tomorrow about this. Have a great day.